So the topic which we are going to start today is market analysis. So, whenever we do market analysis before launching a project or a product, we have to go through certain things. Certain preliminary research has to be done so that our product which we are going to launch should be, successful. So when you do a market survey before launching a project, there are certain things which you need to, really cross check. So when a company grows larger, then any changes they make affect the customers. Thus, if a company wants to keep their customers happy, they need to involve the customers whenever they want to make changes. So, because whatever changes a company is making, maybe a new product launch or alternating the existing one, it is for the customer. Ultimately, it is the customer who is going to use it. So, it is very important that when you do certain changes, you involve customers' opinion in your decision, in your product, so that later on there should not be any regret that the customers are not liking it or maybe product is a failure. So this, to avoid certain circumstances, one needs to really be careful to one needs to be really careful while launching a product or alternating a product, right? So when companies which are small and have launched their product need to conduct market surveys to find out the feasibility of their products in the market and how successful it would be with the target market. So it is very important for any company. The market survey is not only for big companies, it is for any company which is targeting to launch a product, so that they can make sure that the product is going to be a success in the market. So there can be many reasons to conduct a market survey. Why market surveys are so important? So there are here I have listed few of the reasons why market surveys are important. So the first one is, you are starting a new product and you want to estimate demand. So obviously, if you're launching a product, you must know what would be the demand, because if you will know the demand, then only you will see that how much should be the production. So accordingly you will produce. There should not be overproduction, there should not be underproduction, because both the situations are not good. If you do overproduction, there would be no sales, obviously you will be in you will be in loss. And if there is underproduction, it means you are sacrificing your profits, right? So to know exactly how much production should be done, you must know how much demand is there. Then second is, you are changing an existing product and you want to find out the acceptance in the market for this changed product. So if you are changing a product, it is very important you know to it is very important to understand that whether the customers are going to accept it or not. Then third is, you want to find out competitors market and what are the features which make the competitors product a hit. So obviously when you are launching a product, you will not only focus upon your product, you will also focus upon the you know upon the strategy of your competitors, that what they are doing. Because obviously ultimately a customer will choose a product when he will compare, right? And on comparing, if he'll find that the other companies offering a better product at a cheaper price, they will go to other company. So it is very important to know that what the competitors are doing in the market, so you will stay updated with the market trends. Then next one is, you want to find out the most effective distribution channel out of the various channels that you are using. So next thing is, why we need to do a market survey, so that once you make a product, it is also very important that your product should be accessible to the customers. So you must identify the best distribution channel. So for example, if your product is a consumer product, very simple product, day to day life product, then it should be available on each and every retail store. But of course, if your product is something cosmetics or some high brand good, so it cannot be available at each and every retail market, but it will be available at certain outlets. So you must understand, according to the nature of your product and according to the behavior of your customers, that what should be the distribution channel, how many intermediaries should be there, right? So these are few of the reason which I have listed, because of which you must conduct a market survey. Obviously there can be a number of reasons which you must consider before conducting market survey, right? So moving forward, there are 8 steps of market survey. So we are going to study these 8 steps one by one. So the steps are: what is the objective of the market, what is the target market, how will you collect the information, preparing the market survey questionnaire, conducting the actual on field survey, conducting the actual on field survey, analyzing the information, test marketing, and the last one is implement and report. You know, so here we have 8 steps of market survey. We will understand these 8 steps one by one. So the first step we have is, what is the objective of market survey? Why we need to conduct a market survey, right? I mean, why your product needs a market survey, right? So determining the objective of market survey is as important as conducting the market research itself. You know, it is very important to know objective why I am conducting this survey. So for example, you are introducing a product, your existing product, you are reintroducing your existing product. It means you are just making minor changes or maybe major changes in your product line, and you want to relaunch it, right? So you must know the objective why you are doing this survey, to know the for example, you already have a mobile phone launched in the market, and now you want to improvise your services. So you will go and ask your customers, existing customers, that what are the loopholes in the present product, right? So on the basis of the complaints and the drawbacks, you will improvise your product. So it is very important to know that what is the objective of your market survey, why you are doing this survey. And similarly, if you are launching a new product, it is not already launched but you are launching a new product and it is very new in the market, you will try to understand that whether you will be able to create demand for such product or not. For example, when mobile phones were first launched, there were no mobile phones, there were only landline phones. Then there must have been a survey that whether people would like to have such a product or not, and what how much expenses they are ready to incur for that, and will be they able to maintain it or not. Like initially there were incoming and outgoing both calls, charges were there, then gradually only outgoing call was there, call cost was there, then now it is incoming and outgoing both are very minimal. So gradually things are improving, but when it was first launched everything was very costly. So objective will vary depending on the nature of the product, whether you're launching for the first time or it is relaunched. So there are n number of factors which you need to consider before doing a market survey, why you are doing this market survey, right? So you might be spending days to conduct the market research survey, and you might be spending a good amount on it too. It can be very frustrating if the research study does not meet your objective. So before starting anything, one should be always very very clear of the objective, that what do you expect. So if you don't have any standard benchmark, that what do you want to know, then obviously the money will be wasted. So it is very important to clarify your objective, that what do you want to know from customer. So right, so here a small tip is there, that there is nothing wrong with conducting two different research studies at once. For example, you can conduct a study on features which are most in demand for a product, and at the same time you can also conduct which product the customer prefers in the market. So this gives you an idea of the features you need to focus on, and also gives an idea of who your strongest competitor is. So here in this example we are focusing upon two surveys, that my two objectives are like this, that first I want to know that what are the areas which I need to improve, and what are the areas my competitor is very strong, so that I can work upon my skills in two ways. First, I will improve my weaknesses, and I will also work upon the strength of my competitor, so that I will also have same strengths as my competitor. So this is how you can conduct a market survey. So this is our first point. Then second is, who is your target market, Now the next question is, who is your target market? Now it is very very important to understand that who you are targeting. For example, if I have already given you an example of mobile phone, for example. Yeah. So you need to know that from whom you will be asking question. Obviously you must ask question, who are the users of the product if you are relaunching it, or maybe you can ask questions from the potential users. So you need to identify your market from whom you are going to ask questions, right? So if you have the right objective in mind but the survey is conducted with the wrong audience, the results will probably be skewed and you will not get the right result in your hands, right? So for example, if you're launching a luxury car and you're asking about the product from middle class segment of the society, or maybe lower, I would say middle class, right? So obviously they are not going to buy it because they cannot afford it, and asking questions to them would not make any sense. So it is very important that you ask questions from the relevant market. And if you are launching a very daily routine product, and if you and which is for very lower segment of the society, so obviously if you will ask question about this product from a comparatively affluent sector of the economy, they're not going to use your product. Then what is the point? So it is very important to choose your audience very very carefully. Actually you need to select audience who are potential buyers of your product. So this can affect your brand because you probably misunderstood what customers want, and you are going to spend months launching something which customers did not desire in the first place. So obviously whatever results will come, they would be very misleading, and it is not going to serve your purpose, right? So for the very purpose, demographic factors. So there are a number of factors which you need to consider when you choose your target market. So it can be demographic factors, like for example, if you are launching woolen products, right? Clothing line, and if you'll ask and go people from South India, so obviously they don't use woolen because their weather is not like that. So you need to understand what are the demographic factors. There are other things, for example, age, right? If you are launching a product line, clothing line, and you are asking people who are in their late age, so obviously they are not going to use your products. Or it also depends upon their income, gender, profession, cultural background. Of course cultural background plays a very major role, because not everybody is very fond of westerns, so it depends where you want to launch your product. So these are few of the factors you can consider while you select your target market. And of course there can be a number of factors like geographical factors also, and many other things can affect you know your selection of target market, but these are just few examples. So very carefully you will first define your objectives, and second you are going to identify the target market. Let's move forward. So the third point here is, how will you collect the information? So it is very important to understand that how you are going to collect the information. So there are many different types of market research. For example, there is observational research, there is quantitative market research, there is qualitative market research, etc. So observational method is basically used for you can say laborers, right? For example, laborers are working in a factory, and you just observe them, that how much break they take, and how much efficiency is there, how much wastage is there, because they may not be able to give you right answers at time because of low level of education or understanding whatsoever you can say. But while by just observing them very very carefully, you can definitely understand that where is the loophole, where you need to improvise. Or I can also give you another example, like children of with special needs, they won't be able to tell you anything, that what is bothering them, why they are getting troubled. But when you observe them very very carefully, you will understand that what is the problem with them and how this problem can be overcome. So observation method is usually used in areas where your respondent is not in a situation to give you answers. That position in that position you just have to observe them and understand their problems or their needs, right? So this is observation method. Then quantitative market research. In quantitative market research, you will go to market, you may create a questionnaire, you may ask questions from your respondents, and you then further analyze the situation. So this can be quantitative market research. And then there is qualitative market research. In case of qualitative market research, you do not go and ask from people. What you do is, maybe you can understand the market situation on the basis of previous studies already conducted in similar situations, or there can be brainstorming sessions. For example, there is a group of experts, like 40 to 50 experts, or maybe less than 40, 50, maybe 10 experts who are there, who are working in the market, for example, from last 20, 30 years, and they really will understand the market. They, with their own experience, they can conclude that whether the product will be good or not. So this is qualitative market research, right? And also, maybe you can just ask experts from different regions, from different areas of the world. So these are called qualitative methods. So there are different methods, as I have discussed with you. There is observation method, there is quantitative market research, and there is qualitative. In observation, you have to observe at your own and conclude as per your own understanding. Then there is quantitative, where you ask questions from customers. But here, the kind of questions you are asking is very very important, because they play very crucial role. If the questions are not very good, or right kind of questions, then obviously your results would not be fine. If you choose a wrong audience, or objectives are not there, all those things will come into picture. And next is qualitative, where all the experts decide, maybe brainstorming sessions, or you may ask from retailers, you may ask from your sales force, that what is the feedback of the investors. And basically in qualitative, you ask from, not you'd ask that, not directly from the customer, but from the people who are attached to the customer for quite a long time. This is called qualitative market research. Then there is bottom line is, you need to decide on how you are going to collect the information. If you are going to collect mall shopping examples or decision making while being a silent observer, then even a CCTV observation can also help you, right? Maybe you want to know that what is the footfall in this mall, so obviously you can see the CCTV, right? So there can be different methods, but obviously you need to pick the right method which will serve you the best purpose, right? So, or you may want to conduct a market survey and gain further insights by interaction with the customers. At such times, focus groups, market surveys, questionnaires are found to be most useful. In a majority of studies, market survey questionnaires are used to interview with customers and find out their answers, which become the raw data, and the data is trusted the most. So here they are saying that in market surveys, questionnaires are filled by the customer, and it is considered to be the best information because it is the first hand information, right? So this is how will you collect the information, which method you are going to use. Moving forward, okay, with the same point, we are again discussing collecting market information. So here, a wrong or useless question in this step becomes a problem or missed opportunity, because if, even if you go for asking questions directly to the customers, or maybe brainstorming or observation, if the questions are wrong, then obviously whatever you will do, everything will go in vain. So it is very important to ask right questions, right? Ask intelligent questions, so that it should serve your purpose. So here are some tips for preparing market survey questionnaires. So because we think that only asking question is sufficient, but asking the right question is very very important here. So here we can think of a few of the tips you need to consider when you make a questionnaire. So first is, use simple questions. Never ask questions which are too difficult to understand for the customers, because they are very common people. They will not understand very technical questions if you ask to them. So keep your questions very very simple, so that they can understand it, right? If they will not understand your question, obviously they will not give you right answers. So your questions should be understandable. Use a professional. So when you make a questionnaire, but I mean, don't go for always don't go for your own understanding. It is very important to hire a professional who knows, how to gather information from the market. Then mix open-ended and close-ended questions. Open-ended questions are where, it's kind of subjective questions, right? And close-ended questions are where you give options. So you can make a mix of both open-ended and close-ended, or maybe you can just ask close-ended, or you can ask just open-ended. It depends completely on the type of product you have, right? So it is very important. Then be focused. Do not deviate from your objectives. If your objective is to know the needs of the customer, do not deviate from the objective. So your each question in your questionnaire should serve the purpose, should serve the objective. If asking random questions in your questionnaire will lead to disappointment from customer, because nobody have this much of time that they will answer 100 questions. So keep your questions quite limited and to the point, so that customer would be interested. If you ask 10 questions, they will answer you. If you ask 50 questions, in between they will lose interest, and maybe 10 questions they will give you right answer, rest 40 questions they will give you just random answers which are not accurate. So it is very important to be focused on the objective and keep it very minimum as possible. Then objectivize. It is as I told you that it is very important to focus on the objective. Don't ask questions just for the sake of asking, right? So ask relevant questions which will serve the purpose. Then online alternatives to physical market questionnaire survey. So there are different methods you can use to fill the questionnaires. Maybe you can use online polls. You must have seen many polls on YouTube, right? So they try to understand how customers are doing. So those are such quick polls that even randomly we also fill it. Okay, let's see how many people are saying yes or no. So online polls can be conducted. So these can be very good form of getting information, because on various websites randomly if they ask you what do you prefer, this or that, and we click it just like that. So this is how their purpose is also served, and we also do it in fun way, right? Then of course if it is a very specified project, then you can go for Google Forms, because these are online platforms, right? Then there is SurveyMonkey. SurveyMonkey is a platform which helps people to get their questionnaires filled up, because they have expertise in this, right? So this is one online platform which can be used for getting your questionnaires filled up. The next is conducting the actual field survey. Then finally, you will conduct an actual field survey. Once you are ready for the market survey questionnaire, the next step is conducting the on-field survey and gathering the information. Once you make your questionnaire, get it filled from the people, go from place to place to get it done, and collect data from people, right? Okay, so the next point we have here is analyzing the information. So once we collect the information from the market, the next step here is to analyze the collected information, right? So once the field survey has been done, the analysis is very important. There are many feedbacks which will be received by the customers, especially when open-ended questions have been asked. So obviously, if there are close-ended questions like objective type questions, then analysis is a bit easy, right? Because then you use certain statistical tools, and it is easy somehow if you know the statistical part, then it is easy for you to analyze. But in case of open-ended question where answers were subjective, and you asked the respondents questions and they answered subjectively, then understanding the meaning of each and every line, and without bias, your own personal biases or your own personal opinions, and understanding, keeping them all aside, understanding the respond response given by the respondent is very, very important and crucial. So making a summary of these answers and analyzing the research can help companies have a better results from market survey. So although making a summary of thousands of answers which you have collected and making a summary out of it is a task, right? But it needs a special kind of skill, so that the analysis which you do should not be biased, should not be according to your own understanding, but what you have collected from the market. So there are both qualitative and quantitative methods available to analyze the information collected with the market survey. So there are different ways to analyze the responses of the people. Like there is regression, then there is discriminant analysis, factor analysis, cluster analysis, conjoint analysis, multidimensional scaling. So these are statistical tools which you can use. But of course, these tools need another set of understanding of statistics. So in today's class, we are just mentioning it because for understanding these tools, you need to again go for deep understanding. So I'm just mentioning the few of the tools here which can be used for analysis, but I'm not going in depth to make these points clear, right? So for this, we can refer these points in some other class where we can understand this tool, right? So moving forward, the next step is test marketing. So test marketing is necessary to determine the viability of a plan which has been finalized after conducting the market survey. So once you have conducted the market survey, and now you have achieved on certain results, you got certain results, maybe you understood that this can we can alter our product like this, or maybe these features should be there in the product or anything. But before launching the final product in the market, there has to be a test marketing again. So test marketing is on the basis of the responses you have received till now. You need to go for a small um, distribution of product. It's like sampling. It can be sampling, right? But launching the product at a very small scale, right? This is called test marketing. So, for example, your market survey suggests a feature added to the core product which you have now done as a prototype. Instead of launching the prototype to the complete market, it is better it is better suggested to do a test marketing with a preferred clients. So you are not launching your product at large scale as a whole, but to a very specific set of customers from whom you can again take feedback, right? Because every customer will not be free to give you a good feedback, right? So you will that's why you do test marketing on a certain set of people who can give you feedback of the product again. So you can launch the prototype to a small market, check its performance, and then proceed to launch it across multiple locations. So once you are done with the test marketing, then you can launch your product at a larger scale, right? So then in first location itself, you will get to know whether the customers are comfortable with the prototype or not. So the location you will select, the set of people you will select, and you will get to know that whether the new prototype of the product is preferred by the customers or not, people are happy with the performance or not. And you can anytime move to plan B, which you may have advised, you may have devised. So if in any case people are still not happy with the performance of the product, then you should include more features, or here it is very important to have multiple plans. If it will not work out, what more should be done? If it will not work out, what plan C can be implemented? So once you do a market survey, you should actually have 2 to 3 plans, like how the product can be improved in the market, right? So this is called test marketing. Then the last one here we have is implement and repeat. So the final step of conducting a market survey is implement and finding on a large scale. So once you are done with the test marketing, the results were fine, then you can launch it at a large scale. If in test marketing the results are positive, you can then implement across the complete market. Furthermore, a large brand generally keeps a target to conduct market survey repeatedly so that they can stay updated with the trend and keep finding insights of what the market wants from them. So here they are saying that this market survey is not a one time stuff, right? So very big brands, usually conduct market surveys again and again. They do not focus upon the result of only one survey. They have a huge team for market and research, and they continuously take feedback from their customers and try to improvise the situation again and again to give the best possible service to the customer. And this is how they maintain their brand loyalty also, right? So this is all about market survey. So once you are done with the market survey, the next step we need to do is to find the characteristics of the market. Like you need to, the most important thing here is to understand your market, where your goods are going to get launched, your product is going to get launched. So there are different ways of characterizing a market. I mean, different bases, I would say, different bases on the basis of which, different foundations on the basis of which you characterize your market. So effective demand in past and present. The very first feature, characteristic of market is effective demand in past and present. So the first thing we need to do is identify demand of your product in past, and on the basis of past demand you will predict the present demand, right? So to gauge the effective demand in past and present, the starting point typically is apparent consumption, which is defining. So how do you determine demand? The simplest way to understand what is the demand of the product is to identify what is the consumption of your product. So obviously, whatever would be the consumption, that would be the demand, right? So there is a very simple formula which we follow in economics to find the demand: production plus imports plus exports minus change in stock level. So this is how you can very easily identify the demand of your product. In a competitive market, effective demand and apparent consumption are equal. So what they're saying, that in a highly competitive market, production and demand is equal. There is no overproduction, there is no underproduction. Because obviously, if there is overproduction, it means your goods are not getting sold out. And if there is underproduction, it means you are losing probable profits in the future, right? So effective demand refers to the willingness and ability of consumers to purchase goods at different prices. So again, in demand, another thing is that your consumer should be ready to buy your good at different prices. It means they should be happy with the prices offered by you. So it shows the amount of goods that consumers are actually buying, supported by their ability to pay. So here it is very important to understand that your goods should be at a reasonable price, so that there must be ability of the customer to pay for it. So effective demand excludes latent demand, where the willingness of purchase goods may be limited by the inability to afford it. So here they are saying that effective demand do not consider latent demand. So latent demand is when a person wants to buy it but he cannot afford it. So you cannot call it demand. Demand is only when he is willing and he is able to buy. If he is only willing but not able to buy because of high prices, then we do not call it demand, right? So demand is where you are willing and able to buy. So your product should be at such a price that everybody should be able to price, willing and able to price. That is called effective demand. So so here in Keynes macroeconomic theory, effective demand is the point of equilibrium where aggregate demand equals to aggregate supply. So there is another approach to understand effective demand, that is your aggregate demand should be equal to supply. It means there is no disequilibrium. Demand is always equal to supply. So it may not happen every time that demand is equal to supply, because obviously it happens that sometimes demand is more or sometimes supply is more. But the ideal situation is that demand and supply should be equal. So this is what we target but it may or may not happen in market, right? But as a producer of the good, this is what I want, that whatever is the demand in the market, I should supply it as it is, not more, not less, right? So this is what we call effective demand. So we have understood effective demand in two ways. First, the ability and willingness of the customer, and second, aggregate demand equals to aggregate supply. So moving forward, so here we have few of the factors affecting effective demand. The main factors affecting effective demand will be price. So obviously, there is a relationship between demand and price. This is what we know. So obviously, if something is beyond our budget, we cannot buy it. So one of the most important factor is price of the product. Second is income. Obviously, we have heard about the concept of inferior goods and superior good. So as your income will increase, a normal good which was a normal good earlier for you may become an inferior good, right? For example, the income of the person has increased. Earlier he used to buy rice of 50 rupees kg. Now it was a normal good at that time for him, but now his income has increased, so now 50 rupee kg would sound like a inferior good to him. So he is going to buy better quality goods. So the things you want to buy or the demand of the product completely depends upon the income of the person, right? Then price, income, and third is availability of credit. So all the time it is not necessary that the consumers or the producers deal in cash market. They deal in credit market, specifically the producers, customers also at time, but consumer producers all the time deal in credit market. They do not pay in hand. There is a production cycle which they follow, so they deal in credit market. So that's why it is very important to create demand, that there must be availability of credit in the market, so that a producer first will buy do production of the good, and he will buy raw material on credit, and then he will do production, and once he will sell the goods and get the cash from the market, then he will pay to the supplier. This is a general rule in business, but of course it may vary from situation to situation, but generally it happens. So availability of credit is another very important factor in case of supply. And as we have studied, supply equals to demand. So effective demand is affected by the availability of credit, right? So moving forward, this is the first point. Now the next thing is breakdown of demand. So how do we break the demand? Four basic factors that affect the market segmentations are: break down the demand. In very simple terms, we can say that identifying various areas where demand is there, right? So four basic factors that affect market segments are: clear identification of the segment. So first of all, you need to identify a segment where the demand of the product is there. So for every product there are different segments, and every segment would demand a little bit of alteration in the product. You can take any basic consumer product also, like salt is the basic consumer product, but then also you divide it in segment. Few people prefer very simple kind of salt, few people want organic salt. There are a number of categories also, and obviously as per increase in the income, they want something better. It is good for heart, or it is good for BP. They have so many things, right? So for any product, any random product, basic to basic product also, there is segment. So we need to identify what are the segments of the product we are going to launch. So we need to alter it accordingly. For example, any other product, like any consumer product, any eatable also, there is a different, these are different qualities of the product. So those different qualities are demanded by the customer on the basis of their income, right? So first is segmentation. Second is measurability of its effective size. Now second step is to identify the size of each segment. As I given you the example of salt, there are, for example, two qualities. I'll just divide it into two qualities to make it simple. One is basic salt, and other salt is a bit expensive, which is for heart patients or other people, right, who have certain medical condition, right? So those who have medical condition would need a salt of a bit higher price, and rest of the people will choose salt with minimum price, right? Now we need to identify like 60/40, 50/50, 30/60, or 30/70, or whatsoever. So the second step is to identify the size of each segment. Third is its accessibility through promotional efforts. At times when people were not aware about that salt can create this or that, people were having same kind of salt. Nobody thought that if I'll have this salt, it would be good for my heart, it would be good for the immunity, or there are so many promotional schemes. But what a producer does here is he creates demand. He put all these things in the mind of customer that if you use this kind of salt, it would be good for your heart, it would be good for the growth of your child's brain. There are so many advertisements. So your promotional efforts are going to create demand. There was no as such need of such kind of salt in the market, but because of high promotion, people thought yes, it is going to help in case, or to for better immunity or something. So we need to understand that do we have accessibility to the promotional events. For example, if I talk about very long time ago, if people were not very prone to advertisements, right? Like there was only TV, right? Then promotional events were something else. But now there are so many promotional ways, like because of online platform, internet platform, promotional events have gone to a new height. So you need to understand that whether promotional efforts are going to make a difference, and what promotional platform can be used to increase the demand of your product, right? Then next is its appropriateness to the policies and resources of the company. So whatever promotional effort you take, whatever promotional platform you are choosing, it should be appropriate to the policies of the company and the resources available. Resources available means the company must have that much of funds that it can go for such a huge campaign, promotional campaign. And the policies, again, policies, these are the cultural values of a company. It's like especially Tata, they have very high cultural values. They have their own standards. They do not go do random stuff just to increase their sales. They have their moral standards. So your promotional event should be as per the policies and the resources available for the company. Then the four basic market segmentation strategies are, so there are different market segmentation strategy. I mean, on the basis of which you divide your market, on the basis of which you segment your market. So the first is behavioral, which is again a very difficult one, because behavior changes very frequently. Because one day a customer will be happy with the product, second day someone, maybe his or her relative, will say something, they will not agree to the product's performance, right? So this part of market segmentation, dividing the making the segment of the product on the basis of behavior, is a very difficult part, because it changes very soon. Today you are conducting a survey, and accordingly you have made a segment, you accordingly you have done production. I mean, very soon it may change. That's why I told you that big companies do market surveys very frequently to understand the change in the behavior of the customer. So the first segment on the basis of behavior, for any kind of good, like consumer good, maybe fashion goods, maybe any kind of good. Then demographic again, that where do they live, or what is their maybe gender. On the basis of gender also, a male and a female prefer different kind of stuff. This is the basic difference between their behavior. A female would want maybe a more good looking stuff, I would say, but a male may, I mean, it is just an example. It may not happen in every case. I'm not generalizing it. Just an example, that a male may want something which is durable. So this is just an example, but it may go vice versa or whatsoever. So on the basis of demographics like gender, age, income, or anything like that, right? Then psychographic and behavioral factors are quite interrelated with each other. In psychographic, again, the psychology of the customer needs to be understood very nicely, that how one thing really triggers the consumer behavior. I'll just give you a very small example. At the start of the pandemic, if you have seen that Tata has donated a lot of money and people were very happy, wow, this and that. I mean, they were all praising the efforts of Tata, Ratan Tata. And after some time, there was an advertisement where a girl got married, Hindu and Muslim girl, I mean, something like that was there. And suddenly people were against them, that they are spreading wrong kind of stuff in the environment, they are brainwashing the youth. So see how fast the psychology of the people changed. One moment they were so happy, they were praising and praising, and the other moment they were all against. They went to the showrooms of Tata, Tanishq, and they broke their glasses, right? So this is a very simple example of psychological behavior of any investor, any consumer, right? So the next is geographic. Geographic is very simple, because according to the place where you live, your dressing sense, your taste in food, your taste in clothing, your taste in, where do you hang around, everything changes. If people are from metropolitan cities, they have a different kind of lifestyle. And if same age group people are from, maybe a little rural areas, or I won't say rural, but a little less urbanized, their behavior would be completely different. They don't want to spend too much on lifestyle. So on the basis of geographical factors, you can segregate your demand also, right? So this is how you break your demand. So here we need to understand that how do we divide market segments? What are the bases on the basis of which you divide the market? The first basis is nature of the product. So obviously the first thing is nature of the product, whether it is a consumer good, whether it is a luxury good, inferior good, or maybe normal good. So on this basis you divide the segments, right? So then the second basis of market segmentation is, I mean, on the basis of which you make segments in market, is consumer group. So consumer groups can be, maybe according to the income, maybe according to age, or any demographic factor, education, or anything. So the second type of segmentation can be consumer segment. And the third is geographical division. So obviously people who belong to different areas will have different needs. For example, in India also there are different cities, and all the cities have, all the states have different needs because of the geographical situation. Like some of the states are very cold, some of the states are very humid, some have normal weather. So accordingly, there are geographical divisions, and plus there are cultural differences also, education level also, urbanization also. So you divide the market on the basis of these three basic criterias, although there can be n number of segmentations according to your product, or maybe you can make your own divisions, you can make your own segments as and how you want, right? So next is criteria needed for segmentation to occur. So what criteria is required for segmentation? The first is segments must have enough profit potential to justify developing and maintaining a market. So here, one thing is very important, that when you make a segment, your segment should be profitable enough. You cannot make a segment for a very small number of people. So there has to be certain number of people who will be there in your segment. If there are very few people in one segment, then you cannot define it as a segment. So there has to be a minimum number to maintain a segment, then only you call it a segment, otherwise you don't call it a segment. Like for example, there is a particular good, but there is only 1% of people who require such kind of good, so you cannot call it a segment, right? This is a very smaller, this is a very smaller set of people. And why we do not call it a segment? Because then you will not be in profit. If you make it a segment, you will do all the alterations for a very few people, so it will not be a very profitable situation for you. Then moving forward, the second is consumer must have heterogeneous needs for the product. So when do we make a segment? When people have different demands. Obviously, if everybody have same demand, same kind of thing everybody want, then there would be no need to make a segment. Segments are only made when people have heterogeneous demand, people have different kinds of demand, then only segments are prepared. Then the third one is segmented consumer needs must be homogeneous. So I mean, when you make a segment, all the people in one segment should have same kinds of needs. So across segments, people must have different needs, but between a segment, all the people should have similar needs. Then only we call it a segment. If within a segment only people will demand for different kind of things, then it is not called a segment. So this is how you make segments to create demand, to understand demand, right? So the second type of market segment is price. So price statistics must be gathered along with statistics pertaining to physical quantities. It may be helpful to distinguish the following types of prices. So, to understand, market completely, the next characteristic is price. And it is very important to understand what should be the price of the product that customer will demand it. If you will overprice your product, then nobody will demand it. So you need to be very, very careful when you establish a price for the product. For example, if you overprices, the demand would be less. If you will underprice it, your profit will suffer. So it is very important to understand that what should be the price of your product, right? So there are different types of prices. The first one is manufacturer's price, quoted as FOB, which is called free on board. And the second is price of CIF, called cost insurance and freight price. So what is FOB and CIF? These terms are basically used when you import or export goods, right? These terms are used then, or there is some transportation involved. Okay. So in free of board, in FOB, there is no insurance price included, there is no freight included, it is just the cost of the product. But in case of CIF, it includes the cost of the product, the insurance of the product, insurance of the product while transporting it. Like for example, you are transporting your product through sea, and if any damage may happen, obviously insurance would pay you off. So who will bear this cost, the cost of insurance? Either it can be the importer or exporter. So it is decided on the terms of importer and exporter, that who is going to bear the cost of insurance. But we call it that who is going to bear it. If the importer asks for FOB, it means the exporter will not do any insurance of the product, and if there is any loss, the whole loss will be of the importer. But at times he wants to get it insured, then there is CIF. So it includes cost, insurance and freight, right? So FOB does not include any insurance or freight charges, and then exporter will just charge the cost of the money, and rest of the things will be handled by importer, because obviously insurance is a very important, right? And freight cannot be ignored, right? So then he has to bear all these costs, or he has to make all the arrangements at his own. But when the importer says that I cannot manage it at my own, I want you to do this on me for me, and I will pay for it. So we call it CIF. So it completely depends on the terms of importer and exporter, that whether they want their product on FOB or CIF, right? Then next is landed price for the imported goods. See, landed price is again a bit different for imported good, because there would be again some charges for undocking it, to unpack it. So that charges would be a bit higher. Then again, every time the goods move from one place to another, there would be certain costs would be included in the cost of the product. So then there is landed price, which would also include undocking charges or something like that. Then there is average wholesale prices. Then if you buy a product at wholesale, what would be the price? Obviously it would be a bit lesser. And if you sell it at retail, if you buy it at retail shops, then again the prices would be a bit higher, right? So these are four types of prices when we talk about market characteristics. So I'll just repeat it again. The first price is FOB or CIF, then second is landed prices, the third one is wholesale prices, and the last one is retail prices. So we need to identify all the prices so that we can very clearly understand the nature of the market, the characteristic of the market. So moving forward, we have distribution channel. So the next very important characteristic of market is distribution channel. The methods of distribution and sales promotion employed presently and their rationale must be specified. Such a study may explain certain patterns of consumption and highlight the difficulties that may be encountered in marketing the proposed products. So, if you have made a wonderful product, you have done all the research, you have made a product which is, suitable as per the requirement of the customer, everything you have done. But if your product is not easily available to the customer, he will switch to some other product. So, if because whatever I want, whatever product, day to day product I want, if it is not very easily available for me, then I will try to find some alternative. That I always have to do so much of hassle. If I want this product, then I should find something good which can be used alternatively. So if your distribution channel is not that efficient, then your customers will leave you and they will try to find an alternative for your product. So it is very important to have a very sorted distribution channel so that your customers will stay loyal to you. So there are different ways of distribution channels. There are different types of distribution channels. The first one is direct sales. So what is direct sales? That the company sells the product itself, right? There are no distribution channels needed. If you want to buy the product, you directly buy from the manufacturer, right? So this usually happens for small businesses, because if the business has become so large, not everybody, you cannot sell it directly. Then you always would need some intermediaries who can help you to distribute the product. So this method of distribution can be used when you have a small business, so you can directly sell your product. If anybody wants to buy your product, yeah, they will directly buy it from you, right? Then there is retail network. Then second thing is, if your business has become a bit wider, and your it is not, and you are distributing your product maybe countrywide or maybe worldwide, then you would definitely need some retail network. So that then it would not be possible to directly sell the product. It will become very difficult and customer will not be able to access you. So if your product has become a worldwide product, then obviously have a retail network so that it can be easily available anywhere. You can have franchisee also, or you can distribute your product on different platforms, like different, and your product can be available at different retail shops, random retail shops, very small retail shops also. So it completely depends that whether you want to have franchises of your product line, or maybe you want to be it available at different retail networks. So it completely depends on you. Nowadays, for many branded products, so they usually open franchises for their products rather than randomly making it available anywhere. But it depends on the nature of the product and the marketing scheme of the company also. So there are a number of factors which affect the choice of retail network which a company wants to use. Then there is wholesale. Maybe you don't want to sell your product at retail level, you want to sell it at wholesale. But again, it depends on the nature of the product, whether maybe your product is usually used for wholesale only. Say for example, household tiles or marbles, these are usually wholesale things. And if somebody wants to buy, a normal person also wants to buy, they will go to the wholesaler only. Usually, I'm not saying in every case, but this is a usual case. So maybe according to the nature of your product, your product is usually available at wholesale level, right? Then maybe if your product is a raw material, then also it is available at wholesale only. If it is a raw material, then wholesale is a good way. you know. Then moving forward, internet. Nowadays the internet is the most common way of distributing your products, because everything is available on internet. You can buy it from, you know, very authentic sites. Maybe you can create your own website from where directly customers can buy it. It also comes under direct selling, but again you need to deliver it. Then it is a, you know, but then of course you can have distribution partners. You can have a partnership with, you know, various distributions like delivery. They provide, they send their goods, they help in transportation of goods. So you can sell it directly from your website, or you can make your product available on different platforms. Like there are so many platforms, Myntra and Flipkart, Amazon, wherever you want to, you know, make your product available accordingly. So the next market characteristic is consumers. So how consumers are very important. Of course, the final user of the product is the consumer. So we, you know, demographically or sociologically make your good available to the customer, and they divide the customers according to various factors like demographic and sociological. As I told you, the first can be age, the second is sex, the third is income, then maybe profession, residence, and social background. These are few of the factors on the basis of which you know, segment your customer. Okay. Then there are attitudinal factors also. Then there are preferences, intentions, habits, attitudes, and responses. And you know, these attitudes are also get affected by age, by gender, by income, by profession, residence, or social background. So these are behavioral aspects, and these behavioral aspects basically depends upon demographical and sociological factors. For example, you know, habits may depend upon the level of income also. Maybe it depends upon the profession also. Maybe it depends on the age also. Maybe it depends on the sex, right? So all the behavioral aspects are dependent upon these demographic and sociological factors, and you divide your customer according to this, right? Maybe you know, you make segments. Then the next one is supply and competition. It is necessary to know the existing sources of supply and whether they are foreign or domestic. So the next thing you need to know is what are the sources of supply. So basically from where you get your raw material. For domestic sources of supply, information along the following lines may be gathered, like from for if your product is domestically available, it means if your raw material is domestically available, then you can collect information regarding location where you should, you know, establish your factory or outlet where raw material is easily available accordingly, so that you can save transportation cost, and it would be cheaper then also, right? Present production capacity, how much raw material would you need? So if you need a lot of raw material, you are working on large scale, then obviously you will set your plant somewhere which is where huge supply is available, right? And accordingly, right? Then there is planned expansion. For example, right now you don't want a very production at a very large scale, but you have a future plan, so accordingly you will choose your location, so that, you know, maybe after 6 months or a year you want to increase your production, then you don't have to shift somewhere else. Then there is capacity utilization level, so that you can completely utilize your machinery. For example, your machinery can produce 100 units, and right now you are just producing 50 units. Then this is underutilization of resources, so accordingly you will do it. Then bottlenecks in the production, you will identify what are the loopholes where you need to work upon, so that, you know, your work can be done with greater efficiency and effectiveness. Then the cost structure. So it is very important that keeping all the above factors in your mind, so that your cost should be minimum. Then competition from substitutes and near substitutes should be specified, because almost any product may be replaced by some other product as a result of relative changes in prices, quality, availability, promotional efforts, and so on. So, you know, when you work in market, you must always keep an eye on what your competitors are doing, because your product can be easily replaced, because nowadays there are so many options available, and the consumer will not take a second to shift to another kind of product which is, you know, satisfying their need in terms of prices. I mean, they are providing their goods at a cheaper price than what you are offering. The quality, if it is little bit better also, Then availability, as I told you, that if your product is very good but still it is not easily available, consumers do not have access to your product easily, then they will shift to something else. Promotional efforts, it is very very important that if you are not promoting your product right, then also you may suffer losses, because nowadays promotion has become such an important part because of availability of so many means of promotion, like Instagram, or these things have become such a platform for promoting your product, that everything has become very easy for promotion. And the more vigorous you have your promotional efforts, the better maybe the sales of your product. So if your product is good, then and you are not promoting your product nicely, then also you would suffer. So do not depend only on maintaining the quality or the basic things about your product. You should also focus upon promotion, that you should not suffer because of lack of promotion, right? So this is supply and competition. Then the next factor we have is government policies. The role of government in influencing the demand and market for a product may be significant, right? The government, how government is helping you is going to affect your production very much. So governmental plans, yes. So how government plans and policies and legislations are affecting your business is very very important to understand. Because for example, now, like, government has launched make in India scheme. Like those who are producing in India, the government will give them special allowances. So you must utilize such plans when you are into production, right? And any scheme available to you from government or maybe other authorities, you should definitely use it and keep an eye that what is happening in the market, what kind of policies are available. Any change in government plans or policies or anything else would definitely affect your business idea. It is very important to have a very sensible business idea which is getting maximum support from government, right? So for example, if you are an exporter, government will give you many benefits, because government also wants to increase their exports so that foreign exchange would increase. Then again, if you are producing specific products which comes under tax havens or maybe under special economic zones, so try to get involved in such products which are under special categories, and you get special benefits from government. So choose your product line accordingly, you can choose your business accordingly. So this is what really help you. Then these are reflected in production targets in national plans, import export trade controls. As I just mentioned you, that if you are working on exports of goods, then government may give you help. If you're importing capital machinery, then also you get certain help from government. Then there are import duties and export incentives. Import duties are there, you should work on those products where import duty is very minimum, because if import duty is high, then maximum of your profit will go into paying taxes in duties. So choose your product accordingly, where all the taxes and import duties are very less, export incentives are higher, excise duties are less, sales tax is less. I mean, you need to keep an eye upon different government policies, so that a maximum portion of your income should not go in taxes and duties, right? So in industrial licensing, it is again a very major task. If you are involved in in production of such a good, where licensing is a very big deal, then you have to maybe due to bureaucracy you need to pay a lot of amount somewhere else, preliminary amount you have to pay. So choose your product accordingly. Then preferential purchases, you have to do preferential purchases. Is when you're starting a business, you need to invest a certain amount at your own, then only you can ask other people to invest in your business. So this is called preferential purchases, that you have to do first. Then there are credit controls, financial regulations, subsidies, and penalties of various kinds. Maybe if you are dealing in certain area where penalties are very high, if you do not accomplish the norms, then again it is a problem. That by mistake, if you cross the required line, maybe this usually happens where you are producing something, I mean producing something which is hazardous to health. So their penalties are very high. Then if you are getting subsidies from government or not, right? So all these things you need to understand when you are producing a good. So moving forward, So the next point we have is market planning for small businesses. So here we are talking about market planning for small businesses. The importance of a detailed marketing plan can't be overstated. A marketing plan gives, what a marketing plan does for you gives clarity about who your market is. The first thing, if we make a very, detailed marketing plan, the first thing we will understand here is who is going to be your customer, right? So where is your market? This thing you will understand first and foremost. So it is easier to find clients and customers if you know who they are. So if you know that your customer basically reside in this area, then you can directly go to them. So it is very important. Then helps you craft marketing messages that will generate results. So marketing messages you can derive, you will know that this is my customer, then how to attract it. For example, if your product is somebody is for a younger generation, so obviously you know that where to market it, maybe on Insta, maybe on various online platforms, giving various offers. It may help you. Then provide focus and direction. So if you have a proper marketing plan, it will give you a direction that where to move, like email, social media advertising, guest blogging is very much in trend nowadays. You can pay to a blogger and they will write a review about your product. So this may happen, like food bloggers are there, clothing bloggers are there. So blogging is such an in thing right now that every second person is a blogger, and they get good attention from people also, that they get good collaborations also. Then there is direct mail, publicity, and so on. With so many marketing choices, you need a plan for determining the best course of action for your business. So there are so many things available, but you need to choose that which one would serve your purpose the best. So this is very, very important here. Then moving forward, so at the end, top market planning concepts. These are the major planning concepts for market planning. Basically, market characterization first, market segment, then target market, marketing mix, budget, and CRM. So these five types, we have discussed all these things in the previous points which I have discussed with you, that how to make a market segment, how to identify your target market, how to set your budget. You will set your budget according to promotional needs, maybe distribution channels, and many other things, raw material required. Then marketing mix, like price, place, like 4 P's we talk about, and CRM, how to maintain good relationship with your you know customers. So all these things need to be done under marketing survey. So your marketing survey should be planned in such a way that you will know each and everything about customer also, and you will know each and everything about the market also. It is not only important to understand the needs of the customer, but how they want their product to be delivered, like how to promote it. So everything is covered under marketing survey. Marketing survey is not limited to only customer needs. It is a very, very wider concept, which would need which would help you to understand the plan of action in all the directions, like working with the suppliers, with the raw material providers, with the competitors, everything. So this is all about marketing survey and characterization of market.